For the first time since the AIDS epidemic peaked in 1980s, the number of Americans living with AIDS has exceeded 1 million people. The Center for Disease Control said there were about 1.1 million AIDS sufferers in 2004, up from 850,000 in 2003. According to the CDC, this is both good and bad news. The good news is that AIDS drugs are keeping victims alive longer. The bad news is that it proves that AIDS prevention efforts aren't succeeding. In the 1990s, the government estimated there were some 40,000 new cases per year. Recent outbreaks indicate that in 2005, the figure was closer to 60,000. The CDC's latest estimates indicate that blacks account for 47% of HIV cases. About 45% of all AIDS victims are either gay or bisexual men. AIDS has hit the general black population the hardest. Researchers found 58 cases of AIDS per 100,000 persons. The lowest rate of infection is among the Asian population, with 4 cases per 100,000. Whites are infected at the rate of 6 per 100,000. When asked of the signs of his coming, Jesus warned of earthquakes, famines, wars, and pestilences or deadly infectious diseases. AIDS is one of the most virulent and deadly plagues of all time. Because its infection period is subtle and very long, it is spread by unsuspecting infected people. The infection pattern is geometric in numbers. It is spread by one of the most basic human drives, sex. Jesus predicted that these signs would be like birth pangs, growing in frequency and intensity as the time approaches. Of the generation that would see all these things, Jesus said, "This generation shall not pass away until all be fulfilled." Another sign of the last days that Jesus predicted involves global weather pattern changes and their catastrophic impact on the Earth's weather. According to a recent study released by NASA's Goddard Institute, carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gases are trapping more energy from the sun than is being released back into space as usual. The UN's International Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, estimates a global temperature rise of as much as 10 degrees by 2100. The IPCC estimates that rainfall will increase up to 20% in wet regions, causing floods, while decreasing 20% in arid areas, causing droughts. And the Environmental Protection Agency says that melting glaciers and warmer water in the oceans will likely cause an average of 2-foot rise in sea level on all U.S. coasts by the year 2100. Jesus predicted that this sign would appear in the generation that would see his return. He said, "There will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and on the earth dismay among nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the seas and the waves, men fainting from fear and the expectation of the things which are coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken." He continued, "But when these things begin to take place, straighten up, lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near."